Oh, and where is Professor P? He just dropped out. So I have no idea what's going on there, but he was just in here, and so he'll be back in just a second. So instead of the debauchery that we had last week where I fell asleep waiting to go live, hey, there he is.
Yeah, you kicked me out, man.
How did I kick you out?
I don't know. As soon as it went to go live, you said disconnected.
Oh, I didn't kick you out, dude. But I figured
okay.
since last week we had such a horrible show, it was time to have something cool this week. So I got the shop foreman here for Mr. Rodder's Neighborhood, who's my Q&A guy.
Yep.
And we got Professor P in here first thing. So we'll have a live show tonight for you for a couple of hours. And hopefully we can answer some of your, puzzling questions and throw a bit of ridiculousness, some chaos, and fun stuff in there. Yeah, but we'll kick it off with who's here. LP94 Lars is here, first one in today at 1:35. Michael Robert Embry, here we go. Fab Race Mod repeat at 4:19. Saying what's up? Okay, One-Eyed Cat, Danny Boyd, Bruce Coltgen is here. Mama M3, she says I'm not going to make it tonight. The heat kicked my butt at work today. Everyone have fun and hit the thumbs up button for Dallas and Professor P. If you can, please go out and hit that thumbs up button. I mean, that's literally our saving grace for doing this every week, because we don't charge any money for it, and it's not monetized, and I keep all the commercials off. So 66th Street Garage is here. Howdy all. Dean Stevenson absolutely blew up the chat with about 47 chats in here. And so he's up to his weirdness tonight. And Bruce Coltgen, did you know the only crown I need is Crown Royal? So they're talking about, Slant Daily Garage, what's up, suckers? And Mohawk 62, Dust Devil Garage, Junkyard D, Evening Gents, Buffdale Campo, hello everyone. SSR Performance is here. Hello everyone. So James, I wonder if he's working on that Monte Carlo, getting it ready for some Triple Crown action.
Hey, when Vintage Adventure Drives shows up in here, he's actually going to get the old brakes off, the old drum brakes, and hold upper control arms and lower control arms off of Plan Z. So, so just tell him I'll just bring him to the No Name Nationals. He can pick it up then.
Okay, sweet. Well, maybe he'll pop in here tonight and you can tell him in person.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, Matthew says, hi, everyone. Frankenstein C20 is in the house. And Busted Radio Garage is blessing us with his presence. Right. Yeah, what's up, fellas? Yeah, hey.
Cheers.
Nick the Van Man is here. And he says, hey, everyone. And then, all right, I think that's it. We're caught up. So last week was a debacle. I literally fell asleep 10 minutes before the show went live and took a pretty good nap for about an hour. So I'm sorry to everyone, but we're going to make it up this week. We got a full 2-hour show. I brought Wyatt in here for comic relief, and Professor P is busy doing his genius stuff at work. He's going to tell you about everything he's done this week, including saving the space shuttle with a small block Chevy.
Right? No. What I can tell you, though, is that if you're really into nitrous and stuff, we're going to have some really cool stuff coming out at SEMA PRI, and just be looking for that, because I got to tell you, it almost pains me not to tell you guys right now, but it's going to be really cool stuff.
Oh, dude. Well, how about this? We shake down Edelbrock. They throw me 2 nitrous systems. I'll put them on a small block Buick and let it eat.
Well, we're going to have someone test some of this stuff, so you might get something you just can't pop the hood on. How about that?
I'm your guy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm probably not your guy. I can't get my junk together fast enough for you guys to even get any feedback from it. So SSR Performance says, hey, Shane, can I give you a TCI converter at No Name Nationals? It needs checked out and rebuilt.
100%. That's no problem. Yep.
Let's see. Dust Devil Garage says, I'll be getting ready for Triple Crown this weekend.
Ooh.
So
that means
Dust Devil's going to make it.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that at all.
No, that's something. That's awesome. So I still have your block though, dude. It's still sitting here.
It looks like SSR Performance says, I'm ready to test. Rusty is primed and ready.
Nice.
So I don't know if that's the Monte Carlo or if that's they had the Rusty Nova. So I don't know if he's changed and went to the Rusty Nova or what. I don't know. Busty Radio Garage says, I need an Edelbrock banner for my shop filming area.
Awesome. I'll tell you what, Pulido@edelbrock.com. Send me your email there, and I'll make sure that you get a little care package. So yeah, send that SPULIDO@edelbrock.com, and I'll make sure that the marketing department sends you out whatever you need.
Let's see, Nick the Van Man says he has a whole week off for July the 4th, mini vacation, and getting my red Ford ready for No Name Nationals.
That's awesome.
So, yeah. So he's got the Ford van. He's going to get it ready. He's been trying to do some stroker stuff and some neat stuff to a small block Ford and put it in this van. But I don't know if that's going to actually come to fruition. It might be just camping van and run whatever it runs. So I don't know. Let's see. Clayton's Toolbox says, I'm buying a used torque converter. I trust the guy, but what should I look for?
Really, the only thing really is just turn it upside down, look to see what kind of fluid's coming out of it. If any material, any particles other than fluid comes out, look at the color of the fluid. Also, to look at the depending on the transmission, but where the seal would be on the inside. Make sure there's no grooves, and then where the dogs kind of go in, make sure that there's no, where an engine turns over and then backfires. Sometimes they'll kick back and they'll put little grooves or crack out the tangs on that. Just look for that kind of stuff. Where the pilot goes into, make sure that is not, I'm going to use the Southern word, wallered out. Make sure it's not wallered out in there. You like that? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the only other piece of advice is if the fluid is dirty that comes out, don't sweat dirty, because you can literally flush those converters out super easy. You take it to metal. Give it to Professor P. They drill a small hole in it. They tap it. They put a plug in it after it's all done, and they flush clean fluid through there and get all the junk out. So you can easily do that, or you can do it at home yourself if you want. Just fill it up with a bunch of quarts of transmission fluid and keep dumping it. So you'll get most of it out. But
just don't look for material. If there's actual metal particles or flakes or dust coming out of that, then it's probably trash. It needs to be rebuilt.
Okay. And then Busted Radio Garage says, I appreciate you. Thank you. Yeah. No Dust Up Garage says, I know. I have just had such crap going on this year. I haven't been able to do anything. I totally understand that. Yeah.
I've been trying to get this car here since January.
Understandable speech.
Understandable speech, huh? Let's see. Frankenstein C20 says, I've been watching Nivlac 57 LS Hellcat supercharged Camaro. I'm really liking it. What's your thoughts? I think it's genius. That's true hot rodding right there.
Yeah,
when you take something from a completely different purpose and apply it to something else, that's real hot rodding.
And they're $2,000. It reminds me of the old days when people were getting those, those B8 71s, 871s, blowers off the Detroit diesels back in the 70s and 80s. It's the same thing. And these things are $2,000. You can get them because all the Hellcat guys want to go with something bigger. So you can get those things all day long. So, you make it easy, but 800 horse. What'd they make out of that thing? 800 horse, 600 horse, something like that?
I didn't see what the end result was. I know that when I watched when they were putting it on it, like that kit that they used, it literally just bolted right on.
Yeah.
It made it super easy. All righty. Let's see. Nick the Van Man says, if nothing else, I'll slide a cam in it and have headers. Have my dad duel it out and put a 456 gears, fix everything.
Absolutely.
Everything but your gas mileage.
But it fixes everything in the 8th mile. So
yeah. Let's see. SR Performance says, I can see some kind of ring bearing floating around in mine. She's toast. Yeah, that one needs to be gone through. I had one converter failed. When was that? Like June of 22?
Yeah.
I think that brand new converter hits up like 3,000 miles. And I couldn't even figure out what it was. It sounded like the fan hitting the fan shroud.
Yeah, that was the stator. That was the stator. That was the bearing cage had come loose. Is that the one that we cut open?
Is that you cut open a Super Turbine 300 switch pitch one for me?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think this one I took back to the shop. I got it from. It was a Continental converter out of like Iowa. It was just supposed to be a stock replacement RV converter for like a GM, like those GMC vans that had the 455 Oldsmobiles and a 425. The front wheel drivey dealy. But it's the same converter, so it's supposed to be one of those converters tight to tow, and that sucker did not last 3,000 miles. It started rattling, making all kinds of noise, and like I said, I thought I broke a motor mount, and it was the fan getting the fan shroud. But it was, when I pulled it apart, there was metal everywhere inside the pan, and I'm like, oh my god, this is not good, But okay, 38 Racing says, and I had a tech question ready. Well, go ahead, throw it out there.
Yeah.
Michael Robert Embry says that they made 707 horsepower with that Hellcat setup.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That's about, you figure that's what the Hellcats made, and that's what that thing made. So sounds about right, because it's just displacing X amount of fluid and air.
Yeah,
so,
and it's probably almost the same amount of air. Yeah.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Same size of the engine almost. So, Okay. Let's see. Fab Race Mod Repeats says Waller out, not to be confused with Cockawalked.
Yeah, Cattywalk. It was a Cattywampus. That's another one too.
Yeah. Let's see. Russell Tripp says, with IHRA buying tracks and trying to be more competitive to NHRA, what is AHRA's plan to get more attention? Well, to be honest with you, Russell, I've been on a 2-year hiatus. It'll be probably almost 3 by the time I get done with this divorce and everything else going on in my life. And that's what's pretty much held everything up, is that. So once I'm done with that, then I'll have a kind of a clear and present path that I can follow. And that's if I choose to do so, or if I have the financial means to do it. So, but our program really, to get more attention, I think the big one is going to be, I'm going to let these guys go to their nut cutting route and kill each other off, and then see what happens from there, because they're still going to do the same thing that they've done numerous times, and they're going to completely forget you, me, every other normal person that just builds stuff and wants to race it. So they're going to forget about us, and they're going to have whatever they want to dump all their big pile of money in. So, yep, that'll never change.
Yeah.
And, all right. So Clayton's Toolbox says, did Transdapt make torque converters in the past? The man I'm getting it from says Transdapt or a similar name, 9-inch 4,000 stall. Man,
I don't know that one. They could have sold a generic one, because I know that they didn't have this place to make converters, but they could have
There's
just sold
only like a few converter companies, really.
Yeah.
And
we sell converters to other companies to sell our their converters, our converters under their name.
Yeah, and it could have been a similar point in time when they were selling converters. Yep. But when you're talking stuff like that, I hate. All right, I hate using advertised numbers for like what they bought it for, right? Like when it's off the shelf stuff is like literally within a ballpark. If it's a 9-inch and it's a 4,000 stall, that actually sounds about right for about a 9-inch converter. But is that 4,000 stall behind a 350 Chevy? Is that 4,000 stall behind a Stroker 427 small block Ford?
What's the torque? And what's the weight of the vehicle? What's the gear of the tire? Those are the big factors: is torque, weight of vehicle, gear size, and tire size. You need those.
I learned a long time ago, I don't generally buy a used converter. If you're going to spend, let's say you spend $300 on that used converter, okay? And I know this is a far cry comparison difference, but for like $1,200, you can get a converter built for your combination that has the exact numbers you want.
Yeah.
So, and it may be more than that now. I don't know. Is it more than that now?
I don't know, but I think so. I think they're going for probably just about $2,000 now.
Okay, well then maybe $300 is a good deal for that converter.
Yeah, because $300 if you it's a shot in the dark, because even a custom converter, they will allow you to one send back, because it's kind of like black magic, even though we can get it close, there's still that crystal ball value, does it really make the X amount of torque? Does the car really weigh that much? Does, rotating mass, there's a lot of things down the line. Also to the fluid, what's the heat of the fluid, the viscosity. There's so many things that play into that. they can't even account for. So they usually allow you one send back and rebuild.
So and that's what they used to call a restall. It was generally like you have a one free restall. That's what they called it. 38 Racing says on super stock springs, how many leaves do you leave in the rear?
Usually on my super stock springs, I only had one that went back. I think it was one or two that went back, but I had about 6 that went forward. I think there was 4 that were cut, and they went from the leaf spring, the axle to the front eyelid, and I think it only had 1 or 2 that went back. I don't remember, but that was on the passenger side. On the driver's side, it only had, I think it was 4 leaves, 2 cut that only went forward, and then I think it either had 1 or 2 that went back. But I had a few different versions of them. They were the super light ones. They were the 2,800 pound leaf springs, and those arc differently also too. So yeah,
He says he's trying to build some.
Oh, just cut them. Yeah, just cut them. Just stack them. So go get leaf springs and just literally cut them, and then only stack them from where they clamp forward, and then clamp those. And I believe it was only 1 or 2 in the back.
I think it's one, isn't it? One going to the rear, and then
I think is what it was. Yeah, but it was one. Maybe it was one that went all the way back, but I think there was another one that helped it. Like it was just kind of went halfway.
I know one side is stronger than the other.
Yes, the passenger side has got 4 cut, and I believe the driver's side had 2 cut that were going forward. But yeah, I think that's what it was. And it actually sat, the car actually sat a little crooked.
Yeah, cattywampus.
Cattywampus. There's the word.
Another name.
Right?
Yep. Let's see. Mohawk 62 says, I think Nivlac got 1,100 horsepower out of their twin turbo setup on that same engine. And, the horsepower numbers that they're making are very relative to like the supercharger, like Shane was saying. I believe in that kit, it had a smaller pulley, and that's what they put on there. But what they're going to find is like with the smaller pulley, that supercharger, the window of operation is where it's ideal. And then you start getting outside of that window of operation, and it's like the gains or the juice is not worth the squeeze, right?
Yeah.
You spin it
more than you're gaining.
Yeah, you spin it like 200 or 300 RPM more, but it's going to cost you 40 more horsepower to do that. And then the air gets so hot.
Yeah, it costs more. Like it takes almost 200 to 300 horsepower to turn those superchargers. So that
really
the reason why they're getting about 1,100 out of the turbo is because it's technically free power.
Yeah, it's efficient.
It's efficient. But if they actually did the BAC on those, the brake specific on that, they're consuming the same amount of fuel, and they're probably making at the crank for real about 1,100 horsepower to 1,000 horsepower. But because you're losing 250, 300 to turn that supercharger X speed, that's the reason why it's only putting out that amount.
Yeah, but see, I'm thinking the ease of install difference between that and the turbo kit was like night and day. I mean, they literally bolted it on in the afternoon.
Yeah, and it's always there. And what I mean by that is you don't have to turn the engine as hard on a supercharger. Literally, the power's right now.
Instant. Yep.
Yeah, it's right now.
Let's see. Dust Devil Garage says, I have an old video on Superstock and factory differences.
There you go.
Yeah, you need the comparison on the springs. That's the one that's going to be the best. And if you're like Mopar guys, they live and die by those Superstock springs. But I tell you what, they absolutely suck on the street. So don't be going to use them suckers on the street.
And they only really work. Now, here's the thing: is I've had them on the Cookie Monster. I ran those all the way up until I got the Caltrax. If you're foot braking the car, the Superstock springs with the pinion snubber, perfect, works great. The second you go to a trans brake, it just doesn't work as good. And it really comes down to how much power you're making. I was making about 600 foot-pounds of torque out of my engine, and it literally would just take those Superstock springs and it would just teeter them because it didn't know what to do. It hit them too hard. It just couldn't control it. The Caltrax actually controlled a lot of that. But then when I got the nitrous, it was the same type of thing. It just outran the Caltrax.
So Nick the Van Man says, I consider rigging up an Eaton M90 on my Curtin 5 liter and tune it with Moat's quarter horse and inject it with methanol. Now, there used to be a kit that Eaton M90 before it came on the Super Coupe everywhere. The Eaton M90, there was a kit that installed it on a 5 liter Ford. It came like as an aftermarket kit. The best one I've seen is there used to be this website. I don't even know if it exists anymore. It was called toohighpsi.com. And the guy used 2 Eaton M90 superchargers and put it on a single 5 liter. and just boosted the heck out of it, like 26 pounds of boost. But those Eatons are super, super inefficient. They make some serious heat as well as boost. And your combination there is dead on. It'll run great, but you're only going to see maybe 4 to 6 pounds of boost out of that Eaton on a 302 Ford. That dude that had the toohighpsi.com, he ended up putting 2 of them after he did the 5-liter. He ended up putting 2 of them on a 351 Windsor, and it was just, what you doing? And slurping some tea. As you can tell, he's wound up. He's just excited to be here tonight. I don't blame him. I'm excited that he's here.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, Dean Stevens says, hi, I'm on video. Everyone from New Zealand Postal Services and UPS management can see me, so I'm laying low. Oh, all right.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, Nick the Van Man's going to have a tough time putting an Eaton M90 on his Ford 5-liter in his van. There's just not a lot of room in there, especially for that Eaton M90.
So I've taken apart this car, and something's been staring. This is Plan Z, and something's been staring me in the face, and I didn't see it until this weekend. Literally, I took the car apart, put it on video, made a video about it, didn't even notice this. I'm putting the car back together, and I'm noticing, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put bump stops on the bottom on these lower control arms. So I got some used lower control arms from a guy I work with, and some strut rods that, because Tony had to cut his to save that much steel. He cut them, right? So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to put some bump stops on this thing. Do you know that Tony cut the bump stops off of this thing? Like, so there's no bump stops this direction or this direction. I was wondering why the wheels sat all funky like this. There's no bump stops either direction. He cut them off. So I got to come up with some sort of limiting strap. Like, there's no bump stops. They're gone. Like, you're talking about less than a pound of material, or I could weld on a plate that has a bump stop in it, at least for when it goes up, so that way there's a bump stop for the upper control arms to bump into.
I would just use an old seatbelt and make it where it can't go up any further.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I'm just gonna get a limiting strap of some sort, because I could just tie it onto the lower control arm right where the bump stop used to be, and then make a bracket and hold it in there. So, but yeah, they're gone, man.
Yeah, Danny Boyd says bump stops ain't weightless.
Understand, but I got to tell you that, like, here's the thing, that I understand he wanted the lightweight of the car, but that's something that's integral on how the car is going to launch, because if the car launches too far and the wheels come in and then the bump steer comes in, you're gonna go down the track all funky, because the toe's gonna come all the way in. So I don't know. So it's gonna have to, because I was gonna start doing an alignment on this thing, and if you can see, the wheels are still off of it, but everything on this car is going to be used. Oh, and I rebuilt the steering box. It just was low on grease, so I'm gonna keep the steering box in it.
Racing says Uncle Tony weight saving insanity.
Pretty much.
Yeah, it's pretty light. I have to admit that car is very light.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I figured out how I'm going to do the lights on the back. I went down and got some tail lights for a trailer that bolt on, so they're going to bolt right on there. So they're going to be like a trailer lights. It just,
dude, I just saw a set of wireless trailer lights.
I saw that too.
Did you? That'd be awesome.
I know. I saw those too. I saw it on, like, it was on a YouTube. Yeah, I saw it on YouTube, man. It was like it's got you plug it into your little receptacle that goes into your plug, and then it's got wireless. I was like, dude, that would be bitching. Put that up in the front, just bolt them on, so when I go down the track, I could leave them save my weight.
Yeah, and you could literally, like, use them on the front and the rear. Buy 2 sets of them suckers, and then have them as turn signals and everything.
Yeah.
So. And all you got to do is wire like a 7-pin plug in there, and then just connect in the transmitter.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to go with the trailer light thing, because they're plastic and they weigh very little, and I'll use the trailer, like the trailer light kit that you can get at O'Reilly's. It comes with all the wires and everything. So literally, I'll have the trailer wires running to the back, and I'll just have lights right here with the turn signal now. So that'll be easy.
Let's see. Nick the Van Man says ideally the perfect street engine for that van would be a late model roller cam 460 build 9-to-1 compression 557 cubic inch short block stock heads idle to 5,000 RPM intake and Edelbrock 650 towing cam manifolds torque. Dude, I think you would have more than enough torque because what's going to happen is that cubic inch, you could use a set of awesome cylinder heads on that, and it's still going to meet peak velocity at like 5,000 RPM. If you left them late model 460 cylinder heads on there, they would meet peak velocity at 557 cubic inches at like 2,500 RPM, and you could never get anything else out of them. The heads on those things are similar to like the Chevrolet big block peanut ports.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, and then the Edelbrock 650 is too small for that kind of cubic inch, period.
Yeah.
You need the biggest one you can find.
I would get a 950 for that. And believe it or not, you would probably get decent mileage. But your cam, I wouldn't even put an RV cam or towing cam in this. I literally would probably put, because it's 557, it'd probably be in the 230, 240 duration because it's such a big engine. And put it on a 112, 114 LSA, spread that thing wide apart because you got tons of torque. It needs everything.
Yeah. You could actually make a really mean street machine out of that. Because you get so many dang cubes.
That's right.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of cubes.
Yeah. Let's see. BNR says make bump stop mounting plates to MIG weld on from 3/16 cold rolled steel.
That's exactly what I'm going to do. That's literally what I'm probably going to do. I was thinking about making the straps, but it's literally just a piece of U channel that comes down, and it's just a little bump stop that bolts right into it, and it's literally this long. So I'm probably going to do that.
So BNR saying 557 cubic inches wants like 450 to 500 CFM intake ports, and that's probably true. If I was going to build something like that and I was going to make a street motor out of it, let's say I'm going to make a street engine. If I had that many cubic inches, 557, I wouldn't even start anywhere near a cylinder head that was like a factory head. I wouldn't even look at a factory head. I would probably buy at a minimum like those Cobra Jet ones that they used to make from Ford Racing, because that's probably about a minimum of what you would want to feed that many cubes. Because that thing, even up at around 4,500, is going to need some serious cylinder head. Otherwise, it's going to be choked down, like almost to the point where it's undrivable, because it'll have so many cubic inches, but the port velocity will peak so low.
That's right.
That no matter what camshaft you throw at it, the cylinder head will choke it down.
It's gonna peak so early in the RPM range that it's gonna go supersonic, and then that's it. You're just not gonna put any more air through it.
You got to remember, it's a vacuum side. So it will actually decompress as well. And as the air is flowing through there, it hits peak velocity, it will just literally stop.
You could put 100 tons of pressure to it and just not going to flow any more air. Once it goes supersonic, that's it. It's done.
What are you so wound up for, dude? Did you have coffee before this tonight?
No.
Sugar. Caffeine.
No.
Sugar and caffeine.
No.
Okay. Let's see. BNR Racing says that 2-Hex Jeff's 521 big block Ford with Speedmaster heads has crazy torque. I'm sure it does. Let's see. Clayton's Toolbox. I bought a 68 T-Bird at an auction. Sight unseen. The body is bad, but it has a rebuilt 429 Thunder Jet, slotted mags, and some other stuff. Not sure what to do with it. Ideas. Is the 429 worth much? No, but so 2-Hex has a T-Bird of this era. I want to say his is a 69. His might be a 68 as well.
That's a gray one, right?
Yeah, 2-Hex had that silver one that he brought down to No Name Nationals 3 years ago. What was interesting is when he hot rodded that thing out, it looked kind of like a Mercury Cougar, is what it kind of reminded me of. It's like a longer wheelbase Mercury Cougar. You know how you can put a Cougar and a Mustang side by side, and you can see the longer wheelbase on the Cougar, but the T-Bird, you could see like the longer wheelbase on the T-Bird over the Cougar, but it still kind of looked like the Cougar. I think it'd be cool to do something like that, but what would be really neat is like give it the NASCAR treatment with that 429 and make it like a pseudo NASCAR drivable street car. Because if the body is bad, cut it up, make something cool out of it that nobody else has. But I'm thinking NASCAR-esque from that era. Wide 5 wheels, and cut out the wheel wells because it'll probably eliminate majority of the rust, and drill some holes in the trunk lid and the hood, and take all the heavy stuff off. Let's see. BNR Racing says those Kazi P51 heads are nice for a 385 series big block Ford, but so expensive.
Yes,
8,000 plus.
Mm-hmm.
So but I mean, they work. There's a reason why he can charge that kind of money for them. Clayton's Toolbox says I'm going to do a video on the car. Sweet, do that.
Bitchin', yeah, do it.
Let's see. Danny Boy says the Cougar looks much better than those T-Birds. I agree, but I mean, I can see the Cougar in the T-Bird. When he hot rodded the T-Bird up, it actually had a Cougar flair to it. Okay, so Nick the Van Man, how about a 557 short block Speedmaster aluminum heads with good small parts? 250, 260 at 50, 680, 108 LSA. Victor with the 950 VRS headers. Any guesses on numbers?
Too tight on the LSA for that big of a cubic inch, though. I'm just personally, it's just too tight. You need something.
I would talk to Jeff too before he used them Speedmaster aluminum heads. They ended up having to rework the whole thing.
Yeah,
the money it's not worth the value.
No, because you got to put $1,000 into them to fix them. So you're right back to something that's good. That's right out of the box. I would just run some Edelbrock heads. Ours are really good out of the box now. They're really good. And as far as the camshaft, I would be putting that thing on like probably a 112 with that big of a cubic inch. I'd go no tighter than a 112. But as far as if you got decent heads, that would easily make somewhere in the 600 horsepower range easily without even batting an eye.
Without even winding it up.
Yes.
Like you don't even have to get up in the RPM to use the 385 series big block. Shane brings up an interesting point. If you're registered for the No Name Nationals, you're literally going to get like a 10 or 15% discount on a set of cylinder heads from Edelbrock.
Yeah. I think it's getting near 15 to 20 now because more people are buying parts.
Well, and then here's the interesting thing is like you could save on shipping if you just drove over there and picked them up at like a wheel call. Do they have a wheel call?
We sure do. Absolutely.
Yeah, there you go. So now you can just make a trip out of it, take an afternoon, the day you're PTO, personal time off, and drive over there, pick up a cylinder heads, go down to, right across from Graceland, get some really good barbecue sandwich, and then hit the road and head back.
Actually, if he comes on the very first Saturday of the month, we always do a car show, and they have the wheel calls opened on those Saturdays. So that's a good time to come. So that way you get in the morning, you can get there at like say 9, it goes till about 11. And then head on back. But it's a decent car show. We have a burnout pit for people, and it's pretty cool.
So Levi's Backyard Performance. Hello from Brooke and I's evening walk. I'm down 14 pounds with just diet and walking. Need to get to 200. Then I'll be a half a second faster. So here's an interesting story that I heard. I don't remember, years ago. There used to be a TV show called American Muscle Car, and they were doing interviews with Don Garlitz. And he said he was in Michigan at Connie Coletta's shop, and Connie Coletta was buying and making these gun-drilled bolts, aluminum gun-drilled bolts to put in his top fuel car. And he was making the bolt like super weak, right, by gun drilling it, because it's like literally taking the center out of the bolt. And Don was like, Connie, if you just lost 100 pounds, you could put all regular bolts in this thing and still be faster. And so that's what he did. He ended up stopped what he was doing. Like, man, you know what? I'm gone off the deep end. You're right. And went on a big diet, lost a bunch of weight, and then ran really, really fast after he lost a bunch of weight. So
yeah, that's actually what sparked me to get back into shape. Was I wanted to start racing again. And I was like, well, I could easily lose, 40, 50 pounds. And that's what I did. I'm 190 now. So, You're always going to be faster.
That's an easy way to pick up
Mhm.
ET. If you're to your limits, like my friend Chris and I used to say, there's a crest point on any car. There's a crest point.
Absolutely.
Okay, you could throw a bunch of money at something making it super fast, like Lexan windows and what is it, optic armor windows in a car and stuff like that. Or you could leave the glass windows in it and put a fiberglass hood on it, right? And it does the same thing pretty much. I mean, the fiberglass hood, of course, doesn't weigh the same as all the windows being glass, but think about it. You do fiberglass trunk lid, fiberglass hood. You don't do carbon fiber. That's where it gets expensive. That's the crest point. The optic armor windows are crest point. You pick the windows in it that are virtually almost straight. You go get yourself some black sand. You cut it at home with a jigsaw, and you replace those windows. Those are the only windows you replace. That's the crest points. So what you look at is, where's your crest point? And if you're trying to go as fast as you possibly can, and you haven't cut any weight, like your own personal weight off your body, you are messing up.
Yep. It's the first place you start. It's easy. Cheap horsepower, cheap speed. This thing's, Plan Z's got all the glass in it. I could probably save another 100 pounds if I took the glass out of it.
Well, take the back window out. You don't have to have a back window to go drag racing, I don't believe.
Yeah, but that curl around air that comes back in, all that dust, I'm not a big fan of that.
There's only dust if you have something on the inside. We have nothing. It's virtually just a hole.
But I'm telling you, there is the quarters, like in the fenders, you can see the front tire if you look through the window. So there's going to be air blowing through from that. So it's going to be a cross breeze. So
I think it'd be awesome because there's no air conditioning in the thing.
We could just roll down the window with the belt. It's got a clip.
Let's see. Thunderbird 1968 says, by the way, the mostly stock 429 can get 450 horsepower. That's about what mine is. Still got stock intake and exhaust manifold stock heads and a better spring so I can rev higher. I just about any muscle car era engine from that time frame, they all can easily achieve 450 horse.
Yeah, or 500, which is very little work. Anything.
Yeah, the ones that are surprising is like if you throw the compression at the Hemi, the street Hemi, and you just like laugh at that 10 1/4 and go to like 12 to 1. That sucker will easily do it by itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Hemis love overlap and they love compression.
Yeah, and it's the Cleveland is the same way. That's the only reason the Cleveland didn't do well at Ford on the street was literally when they were getting ready to release the Cleveland, the compression ratios took a dump and had to run on unleaded fuel. And it went from 10.5, 11 to 1 to 8 to 1, right? And it murdered them. And that's what killed them. Anything that's got a canted valve or hemispherical head loves compression. Let's see. Blue Grit Garage says we made a short starting Anna 67 351 Windsor Mustang for the first time. It supposedly has a crane energizer cam. Sounds like whoever built it went to the bottom of the list. Sounds rowdy.
Awesome.
A crane energizer cam is actually used to be pretty smooth.
Well,
that's like your basic entry street level cam.
But actually they were softer. The energizers were soft lobes, is what it was. So that they didn't have the spring
brain rates.
Yeah, exactly. But they still had a bottom of a pager for the energizer cams, and then they had the Magnum style cams, which were like straight durations. But yeah, energizer cams can still be pretty good sized.
Well, big thing I found out about camshafts: if you get the air fuel ratio wrong, they'll sound way rowdier than what they are.
That's right, because the fuel's still, and the timing too, because the fuel's still burning on the way out the pipe.
Yeah. Let's see. Dust Devil Garage says, is Edelbrock doing the car show? Why is this not changing? Is Edelbrock doing the car show in July?
Yeah, I think so. We're doing it. Let's see here. I'm looking at my calendar. I think we're doing one on the 5th. Yeah, we're doing one on the 5th. But next week I'll tell you guys 100% on that because it's the first Saturday of every month, so I don't see why we wouldn't be doing one on the 5th.
Okay. Let's see. Levi's Backyard Performance, or get rid of the power windows, but it's not for me. If I want a race car, I'll build a chassis car. Dude, you can actually get the crank windows for one of those cars pretty easy.
Yeah, they're like
Yeah, the big one, like your early car like that Laguna, those power windows are stupid heavy. They're like freaking 30, 40 pounds. And the doors on those cars were stupid heavy.
yeah.
They used to crack right by like where the mirror was.
Yeah.
There is a crash guard in that door that I bet if you took that crash guard out of that door, because that was all the stuff that came in with Ralph Nader bumpers and all that stuff was the crash guards in the doors.
Right.
If you pull that out, I bet that thing probably weighs 25 pounds a door, and then take the crank or take the power windows out and put the regular Chevelle crank windows in it, Malibu crank windows. Let's see. Thunderbird 1968 says an older fellow who raced a 429 professionally pro stock in the 80s helped me build my 429 about 5 years ago. We built it just like the 429 Police Interceptor.
Awesome.
Yeah. Let's see. Nick the Van Man, weight seems to make a bigger difference on lightweight, low power cars. My 24 MX5 is quick as I'll get out with me and a half a tank. I had a 200-pound passenger and 40 pounds in the trunk, and it kills it. Yes, and that's because it's small engine. It's probably only like 2 liters or less, right?
Yeah, and the percentage of 100 pounds or something like that is different than the percentage of 100 pounds in a car like Levi's,
Yeah, Levi's car, it'd be like adding 500 pounds in there.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's see. Buff Del Campo says, I lost 100 pounds. It wasn't difficult once I got started. It took me 4 months. Well, when I went on my divorce diet, I lost 47 pounds in 3 months. So I got down to like 157 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I never dropped below 190. I never went below 190. I was trying to get 190, like 187, but I've always stayed like in the 190, 195, and I figured that's my happy weight, so I just stay there.
Wow. Wheelie King says, my birthday present to myself this year, April 12th, was I quit drinking. I'm down 35 pounds since then. 6 weeks and no other changes. Beer is bad. Okay. And just alcohol in general is pretty bad for you, physically, right? Not to mention the mental extremes it puts on you, but I'm definitely one of those people that will tip a cold one every now and then, but I'm not so much for the alcohol stuff, like hard alcohol at all.
I'm 2 years and 4 months sober, and basically, not drinking, and so my weight loss was really easy because when I quit drinking, it literally just melted right off. Once you quit drinking, then it just stayed away. I didn't do anything else, and I just watch what I eat, and that's that.
Let's see. BNR Racing says I'm not a fan of huge cubic inch Pontiac V8s. Same happens. Make huge torque and brake parts. Need the very best everything, no expense spared. That's just when you get into big cubic inch and high horsepower stuff. It's like people are
Shit
fools.
rolls downhill.
Yeah, people are fools for spending money on cheapy scat rods, and they don't hold up in those circumstances, in those situations. I mean, it's too much strain for it. So, let's see. Johnny C says that's why jockeys are small. Yeah, that's because it makes a huge difference on a horse when you got 1 horsepower.
One. Exactly. Yeah. When there's one dealing with one, that percentage is huge.
Let's see. Levi's Backyard Performance says, Nick, there's a point in which it's easier to make more power than cut the car up. I've surpassed that point by a few hundred horsepower. Okay.
Good evening.
Oh, Val 360 Jimmy says, hi, boys, from effing cold Melbourne. So, it's your turn for winter.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we just had that crap. You can keep it for a couple more months.
When I first moved here, I was like, man, I hate the summers here. Now I'm so used to it, it doesn't even bother me anymore. I don't even turn the AC on my car when I drive home, or I drive the green car. It was like melting. They're like, how do you do it? And I'm like, I'm fine, man. I'm fine.
Yeah, I haven't had air conditioning for 3 years, and now the S10 is to the point where it has working air. Wow. And I'm like, I'm all about it now. But it does get like half the gas mileage.
Yeah.
So
I only use the AC when it's really humid and it's raining out and it's fogging inside the car.
that's when I like to use it too. But
Yep.
I mean, I'll pretty much endure it till it hits about 90 degrees, and it's like, if I got to go anywhere, I'm going to turn the air on. Let's see. Nick the Van Man says, my dad had a Crane Fireball and a Pontiac 400 4-speed Trans Am, sounded like tin cans rolling down a hill. So,
Okay.
let's see here. Okay. Twisted Mopar Garage says, I had power windows in my drag car. I had power windows in mine. My T-Bird had power windows. That was the only thing you could get from 87 on up. They had a crank window option in 85, I think it was. And that's the one everybody in the T-Bird Cougar community, but they had a hot rod T-Bird or Cougar. They were looking for a set of those crank windows. But the newer they got, the less that all that stuff weighed. The motors didn't weigh all that much. Yeah. It wasn't that much of a gain. And then I'm telling you, when guys are spending $500 a window, it's like, pass. I'll just put, I'll leave the glass in it and I'll just cut everything else out. Mm-hmm. So let's see here. Okay. Levi's backyard performance, the cage won't allow it, and my power windows are nice. I like it. My plan is to have a second set of fiberglass doors.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Is it a 4-door?
His is the 2-door.
Oh, okay.
There's okay. You're about to crest. When you put fiberglass doors on something, you're cresting.
Yes.
You're spending a lot more than the juice is not worth the squeeze.
Yeah, but on that car it might be because that's a heavy door.
It does have a heavy door. I would go through and gut the door before I do anything, and then I would do just like a Plan Z right behind chain. I would make that the holy mother of invention, and they would have holes all over the doors. In the glass, I would probably make my own Lexan window because it's not hard. If you already have the glass template,
mm-hmm.
you literally go buy some Lexan at Home Depot or Hobby Lobby. Yeah, you heat it up and just let it sit on the window. It'll create the curvature. Then you take another piece of Lexan, you heat it up, and it'll fall on your plastic window, and it'll make the correct curvature for it. And then you just drop it in the car and pop rivet that crap into place. Make sure it's Lexan and not plexiglass, because plexiglass will crack, and plexiglass would turn yellow over time. Lexan seems to stand up a lot better.
Yeah, it scratches, though, so you got to be careful when you clean it.
Dude, okay, so I need to lose 60 pounds realistically. I'll tell you the easiest way to do it. People overlook this all the time. How far do you work from your house? If you work only within a few miles, stop driving.
Yes,
just walk there in the morning. Leave 45 minutes earlier, start walking.
Easy. That right there will do it. It will take 3 months and you'll be down. Done.
Just you'll lose all 60 pounds. You'll save money on gas. And it'll be the only thing that sucks is when you get done with one of those really long days, it's really hot or whatever, and you're like, I gotta walk home,
Yeah.
But I can understand that.
Yeah.
But then you get into a groove, and you start listening to the same music, and then by the time if you listen to the same music on the way home, I did this when I would run. You get into a rhythm, so you know exactly where you're supposed to be at certain songs, and then all of a sudden you're home. So
or you start looking forward to those walks because you're like, oh man, I'm about to get my sanity back.
That's right. Exactly.
Let's see. Twisted Mopar Garage says if you have a heavy car, you're not going to remove some oil. Then you have to build torque to get that weight to move. I don't know what that means, but okay. So Twisted Mopar Garage says of the weight. Sorry, fat fingers. You're not going to remove some weight, then have to build a torque. It still doesn't make sense to me. Okay, sorry about that. Danny Boyd says, were you drinking beer or liquor?
All the above. I wasn't drinking a lot, but I just drank, probably 2 or 3 times a week, and have a beer every night. That was the Southern way. So be out in the garage and have a few garage beers every night, and then just adds up.
Andrew Nelson says weight is the enemy.
100%.
And he's very much right on this. The the way I started looking at it is when you start taking things down the track that you don't necessarily need, all that's doing is adding extra cost to you as the car owner. It's harder on drivetrain parts, right? It wears out engine parts faster. It causes you more fuel consumption at the end of the day. There is no real benefits to the weight. That's why I decided a long time ago, okay, my generation is the one that got big on the, Shane and I are of the same generation, but our generation was the one that got big on serving two masters. The street car that's a race car. Okay.
Exactly.
It's never a good street car if it's a really good race car, and it's a horrible, horrible race car if it's too much street car. There's no real balance on there. Okay.
Pick one.
Right. What I decided to do was like, no, I'm just going to build a street car I can drive on the street and a race car I can drive on the track. And now they're both really good equally at what they're designed to be there for. Right.
Exactly.
And it really probably costs you half the amount of money as it does the car built for two purposes.
Because you're not using it as much. You're not using the race car as much. And then the street car is so stock, it runs fine. Hence the reason for the Lizard King. That's exactly what it was for.
Yeah. And so once you actually come to that conclusion and go, you know what am I trying to serve two masters for? This is dumb, right? Taking all this weight down the track that I don't need. I mean, it was cool when my T-Bird had air conditioning, cruise control, and all that stuff. It had 6-way power seats, dude. And I was taking all that stuff down the track, and I kept tearing up rear ends and transmissions and stuff. And I'm like, wait, am I adjusting the seat on my 6-second pass on the 8th mile? No. Right? Am I running the air conditioner? No. Am I using the cruise? Am I flooring it and setting the cruise going down the track? No, not at all. So what am I taking all that stuff down the track for? I don't need it. And I just got rid of it all. And it worked out so much better. Let's see. And Andrew Nelson says, I love the power windows in the yellow Camaro. There's nothing wrong with power windows at all. It's just,
if they're light enough,
car, there's no point.
Yeah. Mine's got a belt with a little button.
And see, Mopar fixed that with the super stock cars when they went to the seat belt that held up the windows. That's the simplest, easiest thing to do. It still has a regulator and the track in there. It just doesn't have a motor or a crank mechanism assembly. It has a seat belt that's attached to the bottom of the regulator, and when you pull it down over the door, the whole window goes up. And it's real simple. Let's see. We the King 71 says, Shane, Shane, can you explain just how sketchy is Plan Z? LOL. I sure wish somebody would turn Tony's brain loose with real budget. I know that's not his thing, but he starts stuff with so much potential, then cuts short.
Well, here's the thing: is that how this car went down the track and still made it is a little sketchy. Now, I've driven some sketchy things, but I can tell you that there's no way. I have 3 kids. Dallas has got 2. And there's no way I'm going to drive this car with Dallas in it and go down any road in America with that car. I literally am changing every ball joint. I got some lower control arms. You'll be seeing this coming week on the video. I got some lower control arms that were from one of my buddies at work. And then the strut rod that he cut because he wanted to save this much material. I got some, used ones for that. And I literally am putting it back together. I was able to save the steering wheel and the steering shaft, the steering column, all the bearings are gone in it. So I'm going to rebuild that. But I'm going to make it so that way it's going to stop. It's going to have 74 disc brakes on it. It's going to have all new ball joints, upper control arms. It's going to be pretty much like brand new in the front end. And then I'm going to redo the whole rear suspension. I did say in my last video that I was going to take this car down the track with the 410 gear and the 7 1/4. I'm not going to do that at all. All the bushings are gone in this thing. So literally it hits everything. So I'm just going to convert it to my 8 3/4. That way I know that all the suspension and all the brakes are good. The rear end's good. The transmission will be good, and I'll have my engine in it. And I'm going to put subframe connectors on it and put a cage in it. Then I'm going to take it down the track. At that point, it just becomes a shell. on with the roll cage essentially. So literally, this thing's going to be as light as an engine stand with wheels. If that's a car.
And before we get too far, Professor P still looking for a 391 gear for 8 3/4 Chrysler, which is
742.
742 case. So if you got a set of 391s that you want to get rid of, get in touch with Professor P, because he would really like to put 391s in Plan Z.
Yeah.
And I think that's the only way to really work around it, is to put a decent set of gears in it. Because right now the gear that the gear that he has is way too much gear for a turbocharged slant application.
Yeah, it's going to be a 456 gear, and I'm going to run a 28 tire, but a 391, and it's going to have a 270, first gear in it, and with the turbo slant and how light this thing is, it's going to be a 391 will probably be the most ideal gear and allow it to carry it out the back. The 456 will get me right at about 100 miles an hour at 6,000 RPM. So I think I'll be tapped out. So I don't know.
So, all right. So Levi's saying fiberglass doors probably weigh 20 pounds total complete. My steel doors gutted probably weigh 100 to 120 pounds. It is heavy. Heavy Chevy didn't appear out of thin air. Okay. So what I'm getting at is I'm not saying there's not a significant weight savings. What I'm saying is you're cresting the point at which the fiberglass door and all of the gear to put it in is going to cost you more money than what you will gain. That's what I'm getting after. You're going to crest the point. Now, to address heavy Chevy, let's look at it like this, okay? The Chevrolet was the cheapest car General Motors made. It was the bottom of the barrel. Take the same car and apply it to an Oldsmobile, and your junk is going to weigh 400 pounds less. All right? That's the reality of it. Why people always came up with heavy Chevy is because it rhymes. It's simple, right? There's nothing heavy about a Chevy except for the damn block. It's heavy. Every other General Motors car that came in that same body style weighed more than your car. Every single one. So get over it, man. Even the Monte Carlo, the Chevrolet Monte Carlo with all the options on it weighed more than your car. Yours was the lightest one made. So, all right. Super Rodder 2002 says, I always chose a flyweight car to start with. 60s European car, Asian compacts, then stuff the biggest engine you can stuff between the front wheels.
I agree. A-bodies. That's why I love A-body Chryslers. Love them.
That is a perfect way. That's exactly why I did this 63 Buick. It is the lightest car they ever made. With the exception of Opals. I would really like to get an Opal Kadett. I want a 67, 68, 69 Opal Kadett. Those are getting few and far between, and no one ever put a Buick in them, but they did put a lot of Hemis and big block Chevys in them. But I'm sure if they can fit a Hemi, even a 392, I can fit anything else on the planet in there.
Yeah.
That's a lot of valve cover. So Frankenstein C20 says, my street truck is a race truck every September in Sykes, and that's the way it should remain, buddy. Yeah. And whatever it runs. Don't be worried about the number.
Just have fun.
Yeah. When Ken and I raced in Southern California, when I first got my T-Bird out there, I originally set it up to run a quarter mile. And the reason why I set it up to run a quarter mile is I could race on every track. And what you care about is if it's set up for the quarter mile, whatever it runs in the eighth is what it runs. Don't get butthurt. If you're trying to be the fastest car at the track, sure, change it to an 8th mile gear, but don't be worried if it can't run the quarter then at that point. But I did it the way I did because I wanted to have as many tracks as I could possibly run. Last year I was at No Name Nationals. I was trying to break in the 5s. It seems to be like the impossible thing for me to do in the T-Bird. And that's because I'll tell you guys a secret. It has a 390 rear end gear, that engine doesn't make enough horsepower and torque to push that weight of the car down the track below 6 seconds easily. It's just the gear that's killing it. If I was to change that gear to like a 410 gear, it'd be no problem. Run 570s probably.
It is halfway through the stream, and I must disappear.
Okay, go ahead, buddy.
I no longer become
part of the stream.
All right. Well, you're going to disappear, no longer being part of the stream. Well, we were kind of ignoring you anyway. We were talking about all this car stuff, which you like helping me with cars, but you don't really know a lot, huh? Hey, see you later. Chop foreman's out. Okay. Let's see. BNR Racing says Corvette. I like that, but it's a different story. I'd like to build a C4 Corvette with a 454 big block Chevy or Pontiac V8 under the clamshell hood. They're light, 3,200 pounds for a Chevy. I always liked those Corvettes.
Mm-hmm.
I really did. Where I think GM screwed up the most out of the history of all General Motors was that C4 Corvette. They got rid of the turbocharged Grand National because it was such a threat to the Corvette. And what they should have done, they should have put the turbocharged V6 in the damn vet.
I said the same thing. Yes,
exactly. A killer.
Yeah, and at least make it an option. At least made it an option.
That's exactly what they should have done.
Yeah.
And then in like the following couple of years, they should have put that stage 2 V6 Buick in there and just ran all over everyone. It would have been great. Let's see. Johnny C says that it's so true. My Malibu is lighter than a 442 or GTO, although it's a straight 6 model. Just appearance, they look lighter, 67 models. And they are. And it had nothing to do with Chevrolet. It was just the rankings that when General Motors made their cars. Chrysler did the same thing. Ford did the same thing, right? When they tiered them out, Chevrolet was the cheapest, most affordable car in the inventory. To do that, they don't add all the options on. They don't add any of the extra stuff. You get 5 lug nuts and sometimes 4. They had literally every place that they could cut a corner is where they cut the corners. And the Chevrolet was made for everyone to have a car. Then it went up in tiers for options, right? So Pontiac was your next one. Pontiac was the performance division. They threw a lot of suspension and braking stuff at Pontiacs compared to a stock Chevrolet. The Oldsmobile got to be where it was, and then my beloved Buicks, but the Oldsmobile was like super duper optioned out, and they'd had a pretty good power plant. But then the Buicks got to be like, they had the Buicks that didn't really care much about the power plant as long as it had the torque to move that heavy son of a bitch around because it had all the options, everything, frame stiffeners and bigger brakes. What was neat, sometimes the Buicks had the bigger brakes with aluminum drums. So there was a lot of neat stuff like that done amongst those years. And then it kind of fell off in the 90s. I would have to say when Plymouth went away, when was that, 2000?
Yeah, something like that, 2000 something.
When Plymouth went away is when they stopped tearing them out like that. That's when Chrysler stopped. If you go look at GM, Oldsmobile went away around the same time. There was no difference in the tiers anymore, and it didn't provide any better quality or a better car. So they just kind of lost their identity amongst the weeds, and they started getting rid of the cars they didn't necessarily need. So they went from super cheapo car, because that's all you got now is super cheapo car and super loaded boat.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
What do you want?
And it's hard to actually find like
a
something in the middle, or that doesn't have power windows or a manual transmission.
Yeah.
But let's see. Levi's Backyard Performance. I'm at the point of building an actual race car. The Laguna was originally meant to be street strip, but the last owner sort of screwed that up. But not for long. My paperwork is in Indy at the Department of Motor Vehicles. Okay.
Well, but here's the thing, Levi, is that I'm at the same point with my car, the Cookie Monster. It's a mid-5 car, but literally that's got all glass in it. That's all steel. It still has the original frame in it. And it's, got subframe connectors on it. It's got a fiberglass hood and fiberglass bumpers on it. But I'm right there with you that that is the point where the 550, 570, in that era is where that's the cresting point on where does it not become a street car anymore and become a race car? And you're at that 60 to 550 mark is about that mark, and you're right there.
Yeah, he is definitely there.
Mm-hmm.
That's the defining line. Like if you go any further than that, you almost cannot streetcar the car.
No. No.
So let's see. Watzonda 2B says that's why the 89 Turbo Trans Am is the king. It was definitely a sleeper that no one expected. And I really, really wish, I wonder what would have happened if they would have put that in the vet and just continued with the same engine in the vet from like, let's say 87. So they entered the Grand National in 87. So 88 to 92 Corvette. Can you imagine that? Think about it. 88 to 92 was the abysmal GM years. That's the TPI 350 cast iron head shitbox. It's like a turd engine. They weren't great. They made good torque and terrible horsepower. The Grand National engine would have weighed probably 150 pounds less off the nose of that vet. My God, it would have handled like it was a freaking like a go-kart. It would have been just awesome. And it made the same amount of power. It actually made more power, but yeah, I think that would have been the killer, and I think that really at 88 to 92, what kind of precedent would that have set in like the SCCA community? God, I think you would have had turbocharged 6-cylinder engines in all General Motors cars shortly thereafter, instead of having, because see, they went to the LT1 after that. So 93, let's just say Buick and Chevrolet worked together instead of hating each other. If they would have done something with the vet from 88 to 92, that TPI would have never happened. Right. And the reality of it is, I would have to say that the LT1 would have never happened. They would have went to that turbocharged Buick. They probably would have went to the Series 2 V6 Buick that came in like 95 and up GM front wheel drive cars. And they would have kept going with that. And they probably would have evolved that combination until they came out with the LS1 in 1997. That's what I think probably would have happened. Yeah. But a 6-cylinder vet, oh my God. Well, that's what they originally came with, So, but, let's see. BNR Racing says C3 and C4 Corvette has no frame cross member under the oil pan. Makes for near any engine swap possible. Could do a Slant 6, 440, 426 Hemi. I've been lusting after this for a while. Okay. I want to do a C4 Corvette because you can buy them for peanuts right now.
Yeah,
$3,600 to buy you one with a blown up motor and a rag.
And they're aerodynamic and they work. There's actually a guy
who's suspension on them is badass. It's like it's probably 70s Formula One technology, but it's like the wheel on them is freaking wide as hell with the awesome brakes and independent rear suspension. It's a monocoque chassis setup, so it's like excellent for road racing stuff. I thought one of those with like a 350 Buick in it, or even, heaven forbid, a 300 Buick in there, and it would just be totally different and fast and enjoyable, and it would be like literally a GM go-kart. But he's right. You could literally put any engine in that combination.
Yeah. There's a guy who's doing one right now. He runs a street race class. 660 Street, I think is what he's on there quite a bit. And it's a silver one, and it literally is one of those C4 vets, and it looks ugly, but man, is it fast because it's got perfect weight balance. I mean, everything's, it's just, everything's already there. The front suspension's perfect. Everything works great.
BNR Racing says, my definition of street car is that it has functional windshield wipers yet.
Oh, okay. Well, none of my cars don't have street cars.
Yeah, I'm not big on that one. When Brain X came out, that was like optional. Yeah. Mine for street car is like, can you drive it over a speed bump? Right? Can you drive it over a speed bump and then actually not fall apart?
At what speed over speed bump?
It just is something reasonable. I mean, like you see some of these guys with their, what do they call it? Stanced out cars. They can't make it over speed bumps, right? Some of the low riders, you can't put them over a speed bump. I think it should be able to street car. I like the idea of, back in the heyday of when Fast Streetcar America Shootout came out, they used to have a drive. They would go for a drive, okay? But I think that drive should entail some bumper-to-bumper traffic. That drive should entail parking in a parking lot and getting out of a parking lot that's full, right?
Mhm.
Stuff that a street car would really do,
Yeah.
right?
Go through
I
a
think
drive-through.
go
Go
through a drive-through would be a big one.
Mhm.
Another one I think would be very reasonable was get some groceries and then take them home and they're not melted, right?
True.
That I mean, that's the purpose of the car,
Yeah.
right? And so if you want to call it street car, I mean, the problem is every person has a different perspective and a
Mhm.
different level of comfortability. So it's always going to be this huge broad spectrum of where you draw the line in street car.
It's true.
But if you used a street car in a regular application, like let's say you get stuck in road construction on the way home on the interstate, you can't go anywhere, you can't move, you're sitting idling for an hour. How is your race/street car going to do?
Mhm.
You know, would you still be alive at the end of an hour and you hadn't died from heat stroke? That's a good question. You know, let's see.
Yeah, I had a bunch of Volkswagens that were definitely not race cars, but they didn't have functioning wipers. And I had like Rain-X. That's when you had to polish it on and let it sit overnight. Remember that? And then polish it back off. And we would have to like apply it sometimes when we were
Oh,
going up to go skiing. Remember that? It was
yeah,
like,
yeah. You're talking about when it would fog and
yeah,
then you buff it, right?
yeah, exactly. You had to buff it off. That was when Rain-X first came out. Now they have Rain-X that's in your wipers, juice. You squirt it on there and then it's already there. So yeah.
Andrew Nelson says it's unbelievable the difference between an 890 565 and an
Oh,
850 540 car.
he is absolutely correct. That
Whole
little
nother evolution.
difference is massive. Like I've gone okay, here in the Cookie Monster, I did a 570 at No Name, but that was only on a 150 kit. Oh no, I was on 200 kit there, but it was ramped in so slow. But that car with that setup should have went in the 560s. But the fastest that car's ever been is a 558. But the difference between a 565 and just a 558 is big, and the 570 to a 558 is even bigger. But I agree with him 100% because that little window right there, especially through those little numbers, and especially even a 540 to 520, that is huge too. It's the acceleration off the line that's just, and the constant speed that it just carries, at the 330 mark is really insane.
BNR Racing said they did Dallas through Reeves Callaway. You know what? I think that might be a YouTube video I need to make. I need to find a Grand National V6 turbo and a 204R transmission, and I'm going to swap it into like a C4 vet.
That'd be bitching.
I
100%.
kind of want to see, like, let's go pick on some real vets and then see what kind of numbers they do. Like, take it to the National Corvette Museum and take a car from that same era and like run around there, see what kind of number it runs, and then you run that turbocharged V6 one around there. Quarter mile times, mile a gallon tests. Go find out where those guys from the fast lane truck do that bitchin' tow haul thing up the mountain and yeah. And then because they're saying that the ZR1 and the ZR1 was like those are few and far between. And then BNR says the twin turbo Callaway vet. Let me tell you about the V6 Buick and that twin turbo Callaway. The engineers at Buick in '89 made a LeSabre wagon, an Electra wagon, actually, to tow that twin turbo Callaway vet out to the proving grounds in California or in Phoenix, Arizona. And when they got there, they had so much fun towing the car out that they ran the wagon around the proving grounds and kicked that thing's ass.
Exactly. I remember that. I've read that.
General Motors dismantled the Buick Motorsports division after they came home from that. Dismantled it.
I remember that. That wasn't a magazine, wasn't it?
It was a magazine article. Yeah.
I remember reading that.
Let's see. Levi's backyard performance. My car has handled cruises with a 30-minute idle and 89-degree weather. That's fine. That sounds great. That's exactly what it should be. I mean, yours is very much a street car.
100%.
I'm not going to disagree with you there. You have a very good street car that dips its toe into the racing car circuit. If you were to actually go race car on that thing, I bet it would probably run 540s, 550s. That's where I think it would go.
He was on his run. He was on his way to his first 5-second pass there, no name. Well, I was standing right there and I watched it. I watched the 3:30 time go up there on the board. And I was like, oh, I think he's going to do it.
Huh.
I actually thought he hit his brakes because he didn't have enough cage to go that fast. I really thought that's what happened, is he hit his brakes, because I was like, oh, he's getting smart. He's going to look at his 3:30 time and then get his one like hero run to hit the 5-second mark.
So BNR Races says that has been done one time years ago, Dallas, a Buick GNX V6 and a C4 Corvette about 30 years ago. I seen it at Chicago World of Wheels. It was super cool.
Wow.
That is awesome. I didn't know that, but I would like to do a YouTube, like I'm going to do a marketplace search. I'm going to find a turbocharged V6 Buick with a 204R. I'm going to find a vet of that same era. I'm going to drop it in there and we're going to make it fit and make the stuff work and see what happens. I would really like to do that. But of course I'm talking out my ass because I can't even get a video up about me doing body work on my 63 I already own. So, Daddy Boyd says a guy here had a ZR1 in the late 80s, early 90s, wrecked it and put the drivetrain into an IROC. That's actually kind of cool. Andrew Nelson says one of these days you'll see a C4 with a 4200. Oh, the hate will be epic. And see, he's a man of my own tastes, right?
I love that, dude.
I do too. And
own it.
I'm telling you, put the 4200 with the turbo on it in the vet, and then show up with all the Corvette gear on, the jacket, the 80s pleather jacket, all of it, all the stuff.
The New Balance fucking white shoes. The jean shorts, the whole thing, the white pull-up socks to your calf, do it all, and then go to a car show, park right in the middle of the Corvette,
and then open the hood.
Like, what's up?
Yes. What is up?
I'm with you, Andrew, because here's the thing, man. I love my Mopars, but there's two other engines that I really love. I love the rotary, and I love my K-Series Hondas and my B-Series, but I love the K-Series better. But I'm telling you, I am this close. I would put a K-Series in my green Dart and drive it every day, because at 3,000 RPM, that K24 would literally live all day long. It would do 80 miles an hour. It would get bitchin' mileage. And I would never hear anything from that thing. So, and I would totally own it. And you want to know, haters would hate me. Slant Daily Garage has got a K-Series. I don't care, because it works. I'm telling you, I'm right there with you, man, on this one.
Well, see, like I have my own affinity for engines that like aren't in my wheelhouse. I really love the small block Ford. It's so chintzy and so basic, but just runs so good because it's ideal bore and stroke with the correct rod ratio, and it's good. I like them. Now, the other ones I really like that people hate on me for, I love Quad 4-cylinder. I love them.
Yeah.
Okay. That thing in the 80s when it came out, you had V8s that were 240 horsepower.
It would smoke them.
Those things were like 220 horse, and they're half this engine size.
Yeah.
I loved the Quad 4-cylinder. Had it not been for the bad press they got with the head gaskets the head gaskets would go bad on them, and everyone would be like, oh, this engine's junk. Well, no, technically that was the pioneering age of the multi-layered steel head gasket. And that's what the problem was. They were using, it was all new technology, right?
That engine is what made me love 4-cylinders. I worked on a lot of those things, those quad 4s. And for us, it wasn't necessarily the head gaskets. It was the coil packs, because the coil packs were part of that valve cover.
And they sat right on top and got all the heat.
You got all the heat, and they would just melt. And that was the big problem with them. There was a guy who did a land speed record where I used to live and when I was a kid growing up, and he had a quad 4, and that was in his rail car. And I love that thing. And that's when by the 90s, that's when I started really doing like Volkswagens, and I was really in the early 90s, and I started getting to the B series Hondas, the VTEC Hondas. And then in the 2000s, when I really got into the K series, and then obviously the Mazda rotaries. But I'm telling you, that quad 4, I love that thing. I love that thing.
I've actually considered the idea of my little S10 pulling the V6, the 4.3 V6 out, and put a quad 4 and a T5 in it.
To be bitching.
I bet it would get 30-something miles a gallon and run all over a 4.3 V6. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were just a good running engine. And here's what I think has happened, okay? The Quad 4 wasn't bad technology. And what they ended up doing was they took the Quad 4, Oldsmobile went away in like 2000, right? And that was the Oldsmobile engine. And what they did, the last hurrah of the Oldsmobile Quad 4 was the Aurora V8, which went into Indy cars. And if you notice, when in 2000, when they went away, what was the only other platform that was similar to the Aurora V8, which was the North Star Cadillac? I do believe the Quad 4 and the North Star share almost all the same technology and engineering. Okay. Let's see. Mohawk says there's a guy on YouTube running a C3 Vet with a 2JC Nissan 6 in it, kicking butts. I did not know that.
That's awesome.
Yes, here's what I like. The B&R is right. C4 Corvette, all of them have light and very strong Alcoa forged aluminum suspension parts. That's the ones I like. When you open that clamshell, lift it up, and you see the front upper A arms and lower A arms in that thing, I think that impressed me more than anything in the 80s when I opened the hood and saw that. Yep. Nothing had that.
No. If I could do my road race car all over again, I mean, I love my 68 Dart, but I literally would have either got like a C4 Corvette, put a Gen 3 Hemi in it, or I would have got like a BMW and then put a Gen 3 Hemi, because it's already got all the racing suspension in it. I wouldn't have started from like that thing,
Ooh. Okay, there's some stuff coming up here. What's on to 2B says, I always thought the Valiant Dart Duster with a 2.2 Chrysler turbo would be cool.
Yes.
That is one seriously underrated engine, and they were so hard to find even when they were new. Jack McCormick used to run stock Eliminator with like a handful of these things in NHRA drag races across the country. And they were stupid fast in the 80s and early 90s. And then in, was it 92, 3, 4, 5, somewhere around there, they came out with the Daytona. And the Daytona was a not fucking around front-wheel drive Chrysler. Yeah. That thing was fast.
Where we used to get our 2.2 turbos out of were the vans. They put 2.2 turbos in vans.
Minivan. Yeah, you could opt.
Yeah, and actually some of them were even like with stick shifts. So they would put those things in there. So that whole front subframe would come right out, and you could put it right into a car. Actually, this actually leads me to a question. When I finish Plan Z, the very next car I'm going to get on is my 68 Dart. I'm going to drive my green car, the Lizard King, for a while with the Slant 6 and the carburetors I've always wanted onto it. I'll drive that for a little while, and we're probably still going to be doing this thing for many years to come if things keep working out like this. But here's the thing. I want to pose this question. There's 3 engines I will put in there. One, a 2.2 Chrysler turbo. Or would you like to see an SRT4 turbo? Or would you like to see a K-Series Honda NA? When we get to that point, I will pose this question when I'm done with all my cars, and I will come back to the Lizard King, because I've always wanted to put a 4-cylinder in it.
How are you going to rear-wheel drive that Honda, though? Do they have an adapter to hook it up to like a T5 5-speed or something?
I can make an adapter.
Oh, I guess you could. Yeah.
Yeah, and I could make it. I could make an adapter that would go straight to my 904. So I would run like an 8.5 18A, but because 4-cylinders want to be at 3,000 RPM going down the road, I literally could use the 3-speed, put a high stall in it with a lockup, just like I have right now. And right now it's 75, 80 miles an hour, but 2,600. That K-Series makes a shit ton of torque right there. At that RPM going down the freeway, it'll be just fine in lockup. I could even probably change the gear to like a 323.
Well, I tell you what I've always wanted to do, which I think is kind of cool. Like when you're looking at race car, street car, people always think drag racing or road racing stuff. Man, I want to go the opposite way. Okay. Mm-hmm. I want to make a gas mileage car. I want to make a car with fiberglass fenders and hood and trunk lid, and then a super light, like weld wheels for the daily driver wheels, aluminum drums on it, small little rear end, like 7.5 or 7.25 rear end. So it eats up there's no parasitic loss in it whatsoever. Aluminum drive shaft, and then like T5 5-speed manual steering, no air conditioning, and then an alternator on a switch, right? When battery voltage gets below, let's say 11 volts, the alternator then comes on, and it has to be going down the road, right? Mm-hmm. And that's how I want it to work. So it just robs nothing, electric water pump, good aluminum radiator, and I want to make a gas mileage car. Something that I think, would be neat is if you could crest 35, 40 miles a gallon.
Mm-hmm.
My God, using racing parts and technology on it. But think about it. If you got the car down to like 2,000 pounds, what does it take to make 2,000 pounds go down the road and get 30 miles a gallon? At that point, you'd only need about
50
liters.
horsepower.
Yeah, you'd need about 3 liters at the most, right? And you need to, if you're using a 3-liter engine, you need to lug it. It needs to make good torque at low RPM, and you need to lug it with
you gotta put it, not just lug it, but you gotta it's gotta work at peak torque.
Yeah,
peak torque, because that's peak efficiency. Yes, so peak torque. So, and that's on the green car. My goal, I've said this many times, is 30 miles to the gallon between 70 and 75 miles an hour. I've been saying that forever. I still haven't. I've come close. The 204 I got close, but it was dull and boring. I got even closer with the fuel injection, but that was dull and boring. When I had the carburetor, I was getting like 25-ish, right, with this lockup, but it was super fun. I think with these twin carburetors, I've been driving the car. I think I can do it. I think with these two Hollies, the two 1920 Hollies on it, I think on the freeway I could get it. Now around town, because of the gearing in it and the lockup, it's still going to be, it's probably going to be right around 2022 around town. But I think I can get close to that 30 miles per gallon, because the mileage has gone way up ever since they changed the cam and put these twin Hollies on it. It's really done well.
And this is something I've been thinking about for a long time. BNR is bringing up a good point. Pontiac and Mickey Thompson and his first wife, Judy, did that back in the early 60s, was called the Gulf Oil Fuel Economy Race. And there was actually a couple of them, a couple of different ones, economy races. What I'd like to do, what I think would be really, really cool, is if you get like a group of people like-minded like this, where you're like, oh man, I got to go after the gas mileage, right? It would be really cool to do the Cannonball Run from New York to Los Angeles
on a mileage.
On that, yeah.
I've said that so many times. I said the same thing.
And I think it'd be cool is if you put a race together to do that. They're going to have to go below the speed limit. They're going to have to. You can't be running 100 miles an hour and get fuel economy. You can't do it. Yeah. It's just not possible. So
I want to jump. There was someone in here. I was a little farther back. It was an 825 Bruce. I can't pronounce his last name. Yeah, it says, Shane, doesn't the Honda B series turn counterclockwise? Yes, it does. That's why I never said it. That's why I said the Honda K series. And exactly that the B series goes the other direction. That's the reason why they technically were they were reversed inside the Hondas, and that's why putting a K swap on those, you have to change the transmissions, because they go
turn the other way.
Yeah, the other way. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, B series, you would have to use a B series thing, but a K series turns the correct way.
Yeah, but you can always change the camshaft on those and turn them the other direction.
No, because the belt pull, the way the water pump is on that thing, it would be, because on the thrust side it comes thrust, and then on the slack side is where it turns the water pump. So it would be the opposite direction. So and then the oil pump would be reversed. I mean, there'd be too many things that you would have to change on the B series. Just a K series is just a better B series anyways.
Let's see. BNR Racing says Jeff Clearwater, which is 2 hacks. Jeff wants to do the Cannonball Run. Said, we will both be in jail. That's what I'm saying. This economy run, you're not going to be in jail, and it would be cool because it's already a set standard. Everybody already knows how that works, right? I think it would be really interesting to do that. Like, start it off with an economy run with a car that's built for economy, and you have to have 2 passengers. And what I think the smart thing to do would be like, here's a standard weight for the passengers. They got to weigh 400 pounds. 2 passengers, 400.
Just do a whole weight of the vehicle. Why don't you just do a total weight of the vehicle?
That might be even better. Like minimum weight, 2,300 pounds.
Yeah, minimum weight. Yes, and then you could set up classes like 70 and older, or 75 and older classes. That would be really cool.
I think it would. I think it would be totally neat to do that, and like
a carbureted class. An older, have a 75 and older class, a carbureted class, no overdrive class. I mean, just that would be fun.
I don't think you need all those classes. Make it work however you want. But maybe you should make it. You know what? Maybe you should. Well, that's where you just do like a bunch of scoring. You do it with points,
Yes.
right? You run a carburetor. Oh my God, you're up against it. So I mean, you get 200 more points than the guy with fuel injection.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then that you have no overdrive. Oh my gosh, you get 500 more points than the guy that doesn't that has an overdrive. And that's how you score the car to begin with, and then you run it, and then see who comes out with the best score overall. It wouldn't be the fastest time. It would just be overall best fuel economy or most impressive. You know, like
it'd be Times Square to LA Beach in 42 hours. It's about right, because you'd probably be going 60 miles an hour would be the number. You'd want to run at 60, 65 miles an hour because that's coefficient of drag. Yeah.
And you'd probably want like a 40-gallon fuel tank.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
don't stop. Just keep going, because every time you stop and slow down, you're going to be losing fuel mileage.
And that's the thing is well, not just your fuel mileage, but it's also going to kill your average speed, right? If you're only going 60 miles an hour and you slow down to 0 and you put gas in it for 20 minutes, dude, your average speed's like 30 miles an hour.
Yeah.
You know, so let's see. All right. Yeah. This is one that you were talking about. I did Times Square at LA Beach at 42 hours.
That sounds about right.
Okay. 38 Racing says our blue 59 got 24 miles a gallon going to the No Name Nationals last year. That's awesome. Cool, because he's using those big full-size Chevys.
Oh, okay. Good.
I don't remember what was in the drivetrain. It might have been a 283 car, because I think he had a 283 car and then he had a 348 car. Is that right? Big block Chevy. One of them's got a big block Chevy.
Dust Devil Garage has got a great one right there. Everyone should post this. Who's going to be in this for next week? Let's just talk about this. Who's going to be the Triple Crown?
Okay, yeah. Who is running Triple Crown? I don't know. I know my Easy 302 SSR Performance was asking me if they could run my Easy 302. But I think I'm going to go a different direction with the Easy 302. I do need to sell it. I need to get my money back out of it so I can do more YouTube projects. But I haven't told you this, I don't think, Shane. I'm going to come pick up those parts from you.
Okay.
But I am going to buy 1.6 rockers, and I'm going to put it on there because that's what that cam's supposed to come with.
Okay.
The whole idea is to crest 400 horse. That's it. Can I put 40 horsepower of bolt-ons on the thing without changing the camshaft and compromising the streetability of that engine? Because we
talked about this. Yeah, we talked about this, and I said I was down for that. That way you don't have to crack it open. If you could just bolt stuff onto it and do another dyno, then do that. Make the 400 horsepower, then sell the thing at 400 horse. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, well, and I think what it's going to do is it's like, one, it's going to make 40 more horse, but two, it's also going to keep all the street driving characteristics of it. That's what makes that thing amazing, was the street drivability of it compared to DZ302. The DZ302 was a sorry sack of shit below 2,500 RPM. And they were, it was a 60s race car. They were snarling and backfiring and farting and popping and didn't run worth a crap low RPM. The camshaft makes them zing way up and they make good horsepower at high RPM. But the Easy was just like 370 foot-pounds of torque at 1,000 RPM less than the DZ is serious. Okay. BNR Racing says the most mundane cars did the best in the original Cannonball. I don't remember where I saw an episode. It might have been the Fast and Loud guys when they found one of the original Cannonball cars that was done by like Dan Gurney that had a mega tank in it. It was like a Jaguar with like a huge gas tank in it that they had modified. It had like a 100-gallon tank in it. And they were going to run flat out, with a 100-gallon gas tank in the thing. And they restored it. I can't remember if that was Fast and Loud or something. 38 Racing says that they had a 327 Chevy with 3-speed overdrive in the blue and 454 Turbo 400 in the gold one. Okay. That's 327. I didn't know that. And it got 24 miles a gallon. That's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Beto Racing says that Pontiac engineers, 4 of them entered the 75 Cannonball with a 74 Super Duty 455 Trans Am 4-speed. So this would be like the ringer, the factory ringer, right? stock rear air shocks and 256 gears installed. I bet the top speed on that sucker was like 165.
Wow.
You know, something stupid fast. My God,
that's perfect. I could see us doing that. The Edelbrock guys. There's a lot of car guys there, and that would be something we would totally do.
Let's see. Yeah, mostly old parts. Ron Ward saying the DZ302 was a lot like a small cubic inch Cleveland. Yeah, it just they didn't really have much down at the bottom end, but boy, did they freaking sing up top. Let's see. Danny Boyce says Australia made 302 Clevelands. They did, and that's matter of fact. Everybody was using those closed chamber 2V heads from Australia. I think that is a 302 Cleveland cylinder head. I think that's what everybody's using. Oh, no, Ron Ward, this is different. They actually had a 302 Cleveland. It was a Cleveland block. So that was the big difference. When I saw one the first time in Australia, I was like, wow, because if somebody had for sale 302 Cleveland, I'm like, who would waste their time on that? You know, like, because in the States, the Cleveland, like, I mean, it's a good running engine, but it just never got its recognition. Down in Australia, when they kept all the compression in them because they still had like 114 octane gas. They didn't go to the unleaded fuel like the United States did. So that was the heyday down in Australia. Was the Cleveland was a murderer, was an axe murderer amongst everybody else that had already neutered the engines, right? So Chrysler was sending engines down there that was from the United States that were low compression, run on unleaded fuel.
Oh, that makes sense why Fords are so popular in Australia. That makes sense now.
Okay. Yeah, they had hardcore Clevelands up through like the 80s.
Wow.
So, yeah.
But I could imagine a Cleveland head on a 302. What kind of RPM would you have to have on that thing to make it work?
Dude, I don't, especially like a 4-barrel Cleveland head. Yes. My God. I don't like, well, it was the same way with the Boss 302. That was the same thing.
Yeah.
4-inch bore and 3-inch stroke. So I imagine in Trans Am, I want to say they were probably turning 10.5, 11,000.
Wow.
And that was in the 60s when they didn't have the valve spring technology and, you know, but I don't think a Cleveland block, they had problems with oiling.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if a Cleveland based 302 with 4-barrel heads on it would have done very well at all.
Yeah,
it would have. I don't know if it's heavy. They're not all that heavy. It's the oiling. They already had oiling problems with the 351 Clevelands, which were not much different than a 302 Cleveland. I think it would have had probably less oiling problems than the 351, but the 351, the mains on it were just like, let's see, they were 2 3/4 inch, I think, mains, because it's like small block Ford, like 302 Windsor is like 2.5, and then you go to Cleveland, I think it's 2 3/4, and then the Windsor was 3-inch. So the bigger the main gets, you would think the more oil it requires, right?
Yes.
That 302 Cleveland, I think is 2.5 inch, so it would have actually had a better shot at life than 351 Cleveland at 10,000 RPM.
Yeah,
but I'm not entirely sure about that. I don't know enough about that 302 Cleveland. Ron Ward says he's waiting for the influx of LS heads on small block Fords.
Right, I'm telling you exactly. I'm waiting for that too. I'm just waiting for the one guy's got to do it on YouTube, and then 50 other people do the same thing.
Let's see. Ron Moore says the Cleaver has been a somewhat popular combination for quite a few years. 2V Cleveland heads on a Windsor block. I love Cleaver. That was what was in my T-Bird. So I'm a big time fan of Cleavers, right? And the reason why I did that was I got to a point with the Windsor Ford that I was going to have to buy an aftermarket block, and because they were splitting right down the mains. And so when you start looking at an aftermarket block and you're like, oh man, aftermarket 350 or 302 is $2,300. Aftermarket 351 Windsor block that you can make 446 cubic inches was like $100 more. And I'm like, well, dang, I have to buy a crank and rods and pistons anyway for the 302. I mean, this is a no-brainer, you know? So I just started buying 351 Windsor stuff and gained 150 more cubes than what that little 302 could do. I do love a 302, but there is limitations, and it was my wallet. If I was going to spend the money, I'm going to get the biggest bang for the buck. So, let's see.
Vintage Adventure Drive showed up.
There he is. Hey, ask him your question.
Yeah. So instead of shipping those things, I'll just bring them to the No Name Nationals and I'll give it to you there. So if that's cool with you, that way you don't have to pay for shipping because these things are going to be heavy. So, because everything's going to be on it. So I'll just put them in the back of the truck. Or actually, I'll keep them in the garage. And then for No Name, I'll just put them in the car and bring them to you. If you're cool with that, that way it saves you on shipping. Because he's going to be in the No Name National. He's going to Triple Crown, right?
Yeah, he's doing Triple Crown. Yep.
Yeah. So also too, next week, anybody who's registered for the Triple Crown or is going to run it, we're going to have everyone tell who's going to be doing that, who's going to be in it. So that way we can kind of start getting a list of who's going to do it and getting it together. But yeah, if you're cool with that, I'll bring them on No Name Nationals. But I can tell you right now, I'm going to give you the upper control arms. So they're going to come with it. And I want you to see why I took them off.
Don't put them on your car. Don't put them on your car right away. No. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, he says that works for me, Shane. I'll be there.
Perfect.
All right. So BR says Ford Cleveland has a lot of neat design blueprint features. To tell you the truth, I think the way that was supposed to go is you had the 335 series Cleveland engine, which was very much built around the big block Ford, which was the 385 series. I know they can share the same rockers. They also have the same valve angle. It's literally just a smaller cylinder head to fit on a 4-inch bore spaced block. Like it's not 4-inch bore spacing. It's whatever the bore spacing is for the Windsor Cleveland. And then you had the 385 series, which was based for the big block, whatever the bore spacing, which I think big block Ford bore spacing is bigger than big block Chevy. I think it's like 5 and something.
Yeah, big block Ford, stock Ford, you can take almost 600 cubic inches.
That's what I thought. Yeah, you can put lots of cubes in them.
Yeah, they'll eat up a 4.5-inch stroke pretty much easily with almost little to no clearancing.
And I think that's what they were designed for.
Mm-hmm.
Dean Stevenson's chiming in. That's good. We got a lot of guys from down under area that would be familiar with these things. He says the 302 Cleveland 2-barrel was 159 horsepower net. The 4-barrel Cleveland 302, 188 to 205 horsepower net. Each was 9.4 to 1 compression, a good engine, just like the F and J Code Windsor 302, only a lot heavier and a lot stronger. So it was a Cleveland-based engine, so it could have had the 4-bolt mains, steel crank, and all that good stuff. That's cool. It's weird that it's only 9.4 to 1 compression because, man, I tell you what, you get a Cleveland up at about 11, she's hairy.
Yeah,
that's like big-time horsepower adder right there.
Right. Torque.
Yeah. Yeah. Mostly old parts. Ron Moore says, I want to do Triple Crown. Budget is there, but I'm working 6 days a week. This sucks. I found a Hornet and a 343 AMX and a Super T10. Great combo. That was, to tell you the truth, AMC was the very first ones to use the Super T10 from Borg Warner.
Mm-hmm.
And so not just the regular one, but like the Power Brute one with the cast iron case and all that good stuff.
And we talked about this combination too, didn't we? When we were coming up with this, and we talked about every single combination, we came up with this combination right here because it came with the Super T10 right out of the box. Yeah.
Yep. And we thought of AMX or even the later Javelin based cars would be freaking fantastic. If you really wanted to roll it earlier, my vote was Rambler. With like the the 304 cubic inch AMC. But I want to say there's a disparity. All the AMC engines all externally look the same. So they're all the same deck height, the whole 9 yards, including like the 401. But I think the 290 and the 304 came with a smaller main journal, I do believe was the case. And I think you can do a 304 crank in like a 390, and it has the big bore and the short stroke.
We talked about this a few times, but I've been really looking at that 1990 Jeep Cherokee two-wheel drive one, two-door, because that's a unibody, that's a unibody Jeep, right?
I know that I've been saying this for years.
Yeah.
In my opinion, okay, look at
It's
the
light.
XJ Jeep. The XJ Jeep is a unibody construction Jeep. The
Mhm.
windows are all straight. You could Lexan them windows in an
Easy.
afternoon, all of them.
Yes, all
right?
of them.
You can get the two-wheel drive one, and here's the real killer one that no one thinks about. They all came with a factory straight axle.
Exactly.
Okay? The two-wheel drive ones are the same straight axle setup as the Dana 44 that's in the four-wheel drive one, except for it doesn't have any running gear. It literally bolts in place, but it's coil sprung straight axle.
And it's a unibody, and it weighs like nothing.
I know, you could make a freaking killer monster out of one of those. And if you think about it, all the windows are in the right spot. They're right above the rear axle. It's like a station wagon.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Oh, Steven says, no, they never got the forged crank in the Cleveland 302. The idea Ford had was to eliminate high-cost materials. Only the Boss and R-Code HOs got forged pistons. Oh, wow.
So the two-wheel drive one is ranging. This is running weight. Now this is This would be down the track weight without doing any weight lightening things on it. Is 2832.
That's like
the four-wheel drive one is 3076.
If you gut that thing 2832, if you gutted it, I bet you could get down to 2,500 pounds. That's lighter than what my T-Bird weighed.
Yeah. So you're talking about 2832 down the road, and then the other one was 3076. That's a four-wheel drive that weighs 3,000 pounds.
And most of the parts Ron Ward is saying that the YJ uses a Chrysler 8 1/4 rear. Yep. The neat thing about those Jeep XJs was that almost it's like literally like a Ford Ranger 8.8 like falls in them. It like literally bolts right in.
It's the same weight. It's the same like offsets, the same everything. Yeah. I've been looking at those because I'll tell you right now that you put a Gen 3 Hemi in one of those things, it's got a straight axle in it. I mean, that's a race car right off the bat.
And you can make it look like it's a stock Jeep. That's
exactly.
what's like, that would be the ringer, dude. I'm telling you, you know what? You want to talk about YouTube channel freaking blowing up numbers? If we built an XJ that had a Gen 3 Hemi in it with a single exhaust on it and just street raced people and just
make it all-wheel drive. Make it all-wheel drive. And that way you street race it, you would just annihilate them. Because you figure if that weighs 3,000 pounds, you take it, make it light. So you have an all-wheel drive vehicle that has 800 to 1,000 horsepower, and it weighs down the track at 2,700 pounds, all-wheel drive. There's nothing you wouldn't hook on.
Yeah, you know what would be neat is like you get some of this. Like, okay, that Jeep XJ ran for so long, right? It went from like the early 80s to like 2002. There was hundreds of factory wheels that you could put on them, but the four-wheel drive ones, remember the ones that had the holes all the way around that looked so 80s and ugly?
Yes.
Dude, that's what you put on the thing, and you have like
the white one.
Yes.
Remember the white ones? Remember those things? There was the white one, and it was the two, and they would have those splashes of colors on them. And there were the two-wheel drives that all the girls had. Either had the white Volkswagen diesel convertible Rabbit, or they had that white XJ. That's the two that the girls had in the 90s. I remember that.
Yeah.
This car right here, though, this is going to be my after. I'll let some cat out of the bag. I don't care. After I do 6 Smokies with this and the Slant 6 on this, I'm thinking this thing is so damn light, and I'm going to put, some decent, like I'm actually making the suspension good, and it's going to have some decent parts in it. It's going to be my no prep car. This right here is going to be my no prep car because it's so damn light. You put a Gen 3 Hemi in there. I mean, I've got one right here on a stand. Look, I'm building one right now for right there. I've got, extra heads laying on the ground. You put that, and I've got I got a fogger system for a Gen 3 Hemi.
Dude, I say we go nuts on it. I say let's throw fiberglass parts at it.
Yeah.
And then we'll like literally paint it in the garage to make it look like a 60s Superstock car.
Yeah.
And then leave everything like it is right now. Like I'm talking $200 tractor white paint job and hand letter ourselves and our kids.
Dude, I'm telling you right now, I don't even want to put any time into the body. I'm just going to leave it just like this. And
you tear it up. Oh, well,
dude, at this point,
I crashed my car. I feel terrible about that. I'd ruined the wall at the drag strip.
Big deal. See that I've never had a car like literally. This is the first car that I really I'm not tied to. Someone else has really kind of fucked it up. So what do I care? You know what I mean? I'm gonna treat it with mechanical respect, but I'm gonna drive the shit out of it. Is what I'm gonna do. I've never had that before. Every car I've ever had is I've pretty much loved. That's why I have a hard time selling my cars because I never have. I just love them.
Well, Ron Ward says, Shane, pull up the bore and stroke of that 343 AMC and tell me what you think with a good set of heads.
Okay, I will. Let's see. I think we looked this up because I remember I was telling you about this one when I was on my way to TCI. Me and you were coming up with all the rules.
I think this is a 4-inch bore motor.
I think is what is 343.
Maybe that's how they did the 390 with the 304 crank. I think maybe that is what it is. 343. I think it's 4-inch bore motor, which would make the AMC like seriously was a contender, man. That people really
the 343 was the one I was telling you about. This is the 4080 bore one. This is
4080.
It's a 4080 bore with a 3.28 stroke. This is the one I was telling you about.
Killer. That's a killer one. Yeah.
And this is the one that you could put those bitchin' heads on. And this is the one I remember we were talking about someone who would have that
the ringer.
The ringer. Remember the all-wheel drive was Eagle. I said someone's gonna get a 343, one of these things, put it in that thing, and they're gonna come out and clean house. But yeah. Dude, this one right here, this is one of the engines that would be a ringer. Is this one right here? Yeah,
I'm sure.
Yeah, I think
that real short stroke, and then you run like let's say a 6.4-inch long rod with that big bore. You could put the nastiest, gnarliest big block. Well, I guess there is no big block, but AMC heads you can find, like the Indy heads that they run on 401s and stuff. You can run them on that 343.
I wonder what the rod on this thing is. I don't know. I looked all this up before and I forgot, so I apologize.
Well, you would need, if it's 3.2-inch stroke, you're trying to get to 2-to-1, right? So it was 6.4-inch long rod, but I don't know what the deck height on the AMC is, but I think it's similar to Mopar small block. It's like 9.5
rod length. There we go. Let's see here. Yeah, it's a 5.875 rod.
Oh, that's short.
But it's a short stroke.
Right, but I mean, that's a really short rod. 5.75?
5.875.
Oh, 5.875.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's better. Yeah, that's about almost the same as a 351 Windsor. So that's not too bad. It's in between Chevrolet small block and 351 Windsor.
Yeah, Ron Ward, what I would do with that is I would try to get a 6.125 rod in there because that's pretty common. You're going to have to have pistons made anyways. Get something with a cut down the crank down to a 2-inch journal or 2/100, and then put some LS rods on it because they're plentiful and they're light, and then raise the pin height in that piston and call her good. Because I'll tell you right now, that thing will rev and it will eat up some folks because that's the big bore one. So yeah, make it 20 over, make it a 4/100 stroke. Oh, that thing, a bore, that would be awesome. That would be awesome.
Well, then you would be like, let's say you would be 350 cubes and you still wouldn't even be outside of the class limits.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
You could actually go another 60 over.
Yeah, you'd be right there. That'd be awesome.
Let's see. Most of the parts, Ron Ward says, also Fred Brewer offered a set of altered and modified B1 Mopar heads to fit on the AMC V8. So
wow.
That thing, you could turn it up.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the AMCs, man, I've always had a love for the AMCs. One of my friends had one of those, the Javelin or the AMX. It was the one that looked like it was like, rammed. It was like a Javelin, but then it had this like little,
that was 68, 69.
Yeah.
Nexus. There was a 2-door car.
Exactly. It was a 2-door car. Yeah. It was a 2-door car. So it looked like a big car in the front, but then it was like really short in the back.
It's the same as a Javelin, but it's a shortened wheelbase.
Yeah.
They took it right out of the middle.
Yeah. It was awesome. It was a fun car. It was
a cool car.
Yeah, it was cool. I think the car that we had the most fun in is my brother's. He had a 67 Pontiac Firebird. And the first engine was a 400, and we blew that up right away. But then he got this 327 in it with a 2-speed power glide, but it had like in the back like 250 something gears in it. And we were racing a Corvette on the 163. We're on our way to the strip club. You obviously know we lived in Poway, so we're going on the 15, and then the 15 would split onto the 163. And you remember how the 163 had that chicane, and you go over the 52, and then right after that you go on down like to get to like Dirty Dan's or what Pure Platinum. That whole 163, right where you're going through all those cars, all those car dealerships and everything, right before the 805, we were probably doing 150 miles an hour in that 67. It took almost a lane and a half to keep that car straight. Oh, it was so much fun. I love that car.
So Ron Ward saying the weak point of the AMC is the oil pump. Fix that and go kick ass. It's just like the Buick with the front mounted oil pump.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, like
it's
got some experience, dude.
Yeah, it's literally in the front of like the whole thing right there.
The whole timing cover, yeah.
And the distributor sits funky. It sits like kind of like pointing to the driver's side, sticking up.
Yeah, I can totally help you with that because, see, I'll tell you how I think this came about is that AMC bought the V6 Buick.
Oh, yeah.
And I think what happened is they just reverse engineered, made their freaking V8 versions off of that. Because, see, when they bought the V6 Buick, they also had a contract with Buick. They bought the Dauntless or the Buick 350, the Dauntless 350 from 67 to 70 in the Jeep. Cherokees and the Grand Wagoneers had the 350 Buick, and I think what happened was they just took the bottom end design and used that as their AMC.
Yeah, because it's here's a little picture of one that's like the distributor points like funky like that up to the driver's side. So yeah, so it means the oil pump is probably in the front timing cover.
It is just like a Buick. It's exactly like a Buick. So mostly old parts. Says the beauty of an AMC is it can utilize a Duraspark ignition, which is the big cap.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's what this one is.
No scatter.
Yeah.
You're right about that, Ron Ward. The Duraspark, in my opinion, is more bulletproof than the GM HEI and even better than the MSD. That's where MSD started when they started making the distributors was the Ford Duraspark, and then improved upon that. That's why remember when the MSDs first came out, they had the big cap MSDs, and everybody was like, "Oh man, that's great! It keeps it from all that scatter." Well, Ford figured that out when they went to that big cap in like the early '80s, so late '70s. So, yeah, that is a good ignition system. That Duraspark is not a bad deal at all. What I think really killed them. It's the same thing that killed the GM HEIs was the heat. The heat generated by that ignition box. I think the engineering behind the electronics was not there yet, and because the heat would just destroy those things. And I remember, as a kid growing up in the '90s, we used to score the Fords, and like if they had a Duraspark, what was awesome about them is the box just laid up on the fender well, and you just plugged in your distributor, and you're ready to rock and roll. It didn't matter if it went from a 4, 6, or 8 cylinder. It was just like literally the same thing, I believe. So that it was kind of cool, but like I said, when they failed, they're just like a HEI. They're just like, "Hey, I'm working great," and that's it. It's like stop living right there. Oh, okay. Danny Boyd said they started in '77. So,
yeah. I also got all that Jacobs ignition from Uncle Tony. So I got the box and the coil.
Oh, for the Slant 6?
Yeah. When I got up there and I picked up all that stuff, he gave me a Jacobs. I could probably put a Jacobs ignition in this thing. I just realized that I've got.
Dude, I don't know if they exist anymore. Do they?
No.
They used to be ticket in the in the '90s.
They were the very first awesome
multi-spark ignition. Yeah, that was the first one that had multi-spark that I'd ever heard of. Yeah. Let's see. Dizzy Izzy says I really like that Excel GM module mounted on the fender well away from the heat.
Yes,
that is a freaking good idea because and you know what's weird about it is no one in the GM community talks about it, and Shane was the first one to turn me on to that. And what's sad is General Motors is the one that made the heat sink for it. And it comes on like a Blazer.
Yeah, I have 4 or 5 of them, and all you have to do is modify the hole for it, and it goes right on there.
Why didn't anybody talk about this in the GM community?
Do you know where I got that from? I'm going to tell you. Remember that guy I was telling you about in my neighborhood who used to do land speed racing? He used to use Chrysler modules, right? He used to use the gold box, right? Because it was the best ignition on the system. And then he would tell me those, and he goes, but for some of his other cars, he uses this GM module and the Ford coil. And he says because it if you're not going to over a certain RPM, it's the most stable, but the gold box is better if you're going over 7,000. So he's the one that turned me on to that. And he goes, when I got my very first Dart, he's the one, hey, don't have to buy an MSD. Let's just put this module on it and this coil. And that was back and I did that on a Volkswagen. I had a GM module and a Ford coil on my Volkswagen way back in the day before this was like the internet thing to do.
Yeah, it didn't have any. There's nothing in it like a Hall effect sensor, nothing like. It's all done by a magnetic field.
That's right. Yeah. So I would get one of those. I had a MSD came out with a little distributor, or no, not. It was what's the name of those? Pertronics, right? They came out with a Hall effect, right? Well, it would trigger it would trigger the GM module just fine. It would trigger it. So it was all it needed was a signal. Yeah, it just needed to
high and low, and
that's it.
That's what's awesome about it. Is like you can run it off. Okay, any car that had electronic ignition back. Oh my God, it's already over 2 hours. Any car that had electronic ignition back in the 70s had a distributor that would run an HEI module because it's just a high and low signal.
Yeah,
right. And then when they went to the Hall effect sensor, the Hall effect, all it does is create a high and low, right? So it'll work with an HEI module because it's just looking for 5 volts up or nothing or flat.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I'll do too is to test my ignition systems. Is that with those GMs? I just take a paper clip and tap them across, and it makes a spark. And all you're trying to do is just jump the spark and makes it up.
Yeah. All right. Well, guys, we are way over time, and I know that StreamYard is going to light me on fire for this. But I have like 2 minutes over. But it's been a fantastic night tonight. We've blown through a lot of questions and just absolutely murdered this live. Like I can't believe it went by so fast.
Yeah, I did. It went by fast. It was fun. Yeah, it's days like this that makes me happy to do this live for real. Yeah. Some days it sucks, but
sometimes it feels like you're pulling teeth, and sometimes it feels like before you get your teeth pulled, the dentist came in with the freaking laughing gas and you just blow right through it.
Right. So anyways, just don't forget John Wilburn on Friday. Go check him out. I hope on the 1st he helped you out with some of those for the newbies for the no name. Trying to get to the 500 crew or whatever they call them. The
no name 500.
The no name 500. Yeah. So I hope that helps you out. Actually, it even works for me. I started posting up. I'm trying to do it myself. Is put up a short every day for a week. I'm just trying to do it because I want to keep motivated on this car. So that's what I'm trying to do. So yeah. So go and check out John Wilburn, and then who comes after us? Is it Buff or is it
Buff and Kim? It's probably live right now. So head on over to Buff and Kim's, check out their Wednesday night live, and then don't forget John Wilburn Friday evening, 7:00 Central, right? So he always does his live 7:00 Central, 8:00 Eastern time on Friday nights, and we will see you cats next week.
Yep. You guys take it easy. Have a good